Okay, we're back to Toybots, and we're still in the Factory Zone 1, but we're going to finish Factory Zone 1 in this video. It's not going to take too long, because we already did most of Zone 1 in the last video. But we have some cleaning up to do. In the story, of course, our goal right now is to make it to the basement, so we can talk to that mysterious fellow that told us he'd give us advice. But in the gameplay, for gameplay purposes, we're just trying to finish Zone 1 and grab all the master models. The platforming in this section right here is pretty tame, but some of the moving platforms later will get way more difficult. So maybe this is just meant to be an introduction to moving platforms. And right here the game oddly tries to introduce the toy block enemy type. And I don't get it, because we already saw the toy block enemy type, and these guys aren't any different, they're exactly the same. Most of the enemies don't get a cutscene either, so I'm not sure why these toy block enemies got a cutscene, especially since we already saw them before. So before, the platforming we did on trampolines was pretty harmless, but this time we gotta make really good use of that triple jump if we want to jump over these gears, or we can just wait patiently, but I really don't like waiting patiently. This game's platforming is really fast most of the time, so waiting's just not my thing. There's sometimes the game will ask you to wait, but if you're skilled enough you can circumvent that, which is something you'll see really late in the game. This upcoming hazard with those fire pokey things popping out of the ground, this hazard always confused me, and it still does confuse me. The idea is to memorize the pattern that they pop out of the ground and avoid landing on him, but I never have to memorize it and I just luck my way through it every time, so I can't really give you any advice on that section. Also, it looks weird in general, so I try to pretend it doesn't exist. Some more trampoline platforming in this part, this time over an open pit in addition to the hazard moving up and down just like the gears earlier. It's slowly easing you into the harder trampoline platforming we're going to be doing later. I mean, I guess it's nice that it tries to ease you into it, but it's such a jump in difficulty that I'm not sure any amount of easing is really going to help, because you might not even notice they were trying to do that. Time for attack. If it lets me in the tube.
I call upon the power of Juju!
So these are the sections in the game that most people would probably consider the hardest. These optional sections with tack are called jungle gymnastics, and they're strictly 2D. Your jump height is also increased, and really it feels like a completely different game, so if you try to play it the same way, you're probably gonna die a lot. How difficult these sections are, I think mostly comes down to how well you adjust to the new jump height, and how it feels. I used to view these sections with tack as like kind of an extension of the 2D platforming in the main platforming gameplay. But instead I now understand that it controls in its own way and it's its own thing. And when I started approaching it from that angle, it got a lot easier. Something important to note, because you may not notice it, is that the platforming sections with tack, they're more puzzle focused and less timing focused. That may sound weird because, you know, there's nothing here that looks like a puzzle. But the tack platforming challenges are more about looking at what's up ahead and figuring out what to do ahead of time. While the main platforming in the rest of the game, that's more about timing. It's more about reacting to stuff. If you have really fast reaction time, then that skill probably won't carry over to this, because it's not about reacting. It's very slow, and you have to examine your surroundings and decide what to do before you jump. So I guess that's another way in which it's very different. Anyway, I personally think these sections are very nice. And I like how even though at first it just seems like more platforming in a game already about platforming, it turns out to be quite different. And it's a nice break. You know, you use your brain more than your reflexes. It's nice. It also it's also the part of the game that most resembles the 2D platforming people are most terrified of when they think of 2D platforming, though. That being said, the camera zoomed out really, really far, which I appreciate. I wish more 2D platformers zoomed the camera out that far. I don't get why they don't. It seems really unfair that the camera zoomed in so far for most 2D platformers, because I'd like to be able to see what's ahead. Anyway, we're in the master model chamber now, and just like before, we just have to destroy all the enemies, and then a button will appear so we can free the master model of Otis. Otis isn't in 3D, so he's not a playable character. But that's okay, because it's not like the Nicktoons have their own unique abilities or anything, they just have their own lines. And their lines are pretty cute. Some of them are even lore-related, which sounds really weird. But if you're wondering why, for example, when we get Danny and Jenny, they can't use their powers, they have lines about how Professor Calamitous neutralized their powers. And you feel like that's something that should probably be in the main game. You know, something that's in a cutscene somewhere. But it's really not Blue Tongue's fault, because they didn't have a lot of budget, you know. It's very clear the Nicktoons games weren't made on a super big budget. So they did the excuse me, they did the best with what they had. I have a lot of respect for Blue Tongue Entertainment as a developer, because even though Nicktoons Unite wasn't very good and they're mostly remembered for the Nicktoons games, Toybots is really, really good, and oh hey, here's some of that harder trampoline platforming I was talking about. Not only do you have to be acutely aware of where your character is going to land, but you have to be acutely aware of your character's height when making these jumps. Thankfully SpongeBob is kinda short, so that makes this a lot easier. It feels really easy now, but I died there countless times when I first played the game. And here's one of my favorite trampoline hazards after I get done smashing this box. This time we have a horizontal hazard, and we have to jump in front of it and try and hop up to the platform before it clips us in the butt. This is more thinking based than the rest of the platforming, which again is reactionary, but I still think it's cute. I like any kind of platforming that tries to clip you in the butt or the back of the head, because it makes you think a lot about what's behind you instead of just what's in front of you. Anyway, this big panning, zooming thing we're doing right here, it shows us the entire rest of Zone 1. And that's the end of Zone 1 over there. And for this last stretch, it's going to test everything we learned so far, kind of like a final exam for the first zone of the factory. You know, the trampoline jumping, the timing of our double jump, that kind of stuff. The stuff that's going to be important for the rest of the game. So what we're supposed to learn so far is how to deal with trampolines and the way they mess up our character's movement, and how to time our double jump just right to get either under or over certain obstacles. Because going under obstacles is just as important. And since you can trigger your second jump at any time, you have a lot of maneuverability. So if you ever goof up in the platform and it's really your fault, because there's no way you can't get over that. You totally can get over or under that obstacle. You probably just didn't time your jump well enough, and you should do better next time.
So, you see, it's the energy from the ghost zone that will power my evil toys. And that is why I will be named the biggest genius.
Not before I name you the worst boss in history. Ah, hello intruders. I am Chadbot. Professor Calamitous is hardworking and underappreciated helpbot. He makes me work too hard here, and as for that mustache...
Chadbot, I'm not big on the lip caterpillar either. Do you think you could help us contact our friend, Danny Phantom?
Jimmy Neutron, you're a boy genius! Danny knows everything about ghost energy! With his help, we can stop the professor and save the toys from becoming evil! What do you think, Mr. Chadbot? Can you help us?
Help you? Would my dimensional communicator that allows you to talk to your friend Danny Phantom help you?
You bet! What are we waiting for, big guy?
What we are waiting for, big hair, are more action figures to add to my collection. These are some of the master models that Professor Bad Mustache created, each one a perfectly crafted replica of the heroes he borrowed. You bring me more from my collection, and I'll let you use the dimensional communicator to talk to your friend. Deal?
Deal. Maybe we'll stick with a handshake.
Okay, so now we finished Zone 1, and we could head to Zone 2, but we're gonna backtrack instead to find some more master models. We're gonna use Patrick to get the Aang master model, which is kind of weird, but we're gonna do it anyway. So do you remember those slowly swiveling platforms from the first video, the ones that sometimes had gears on them? Well, we're doing more of that this time, except instead of there being gears, which are static, this time there are pistons, which come out of the wall really fast and are way more dangerous. Also, the slowly rotating platforms, they rotate a lot less slowly this time, so we gotta act much faster. These little challenges you have to do to get to the Master Model Chamber, they usually explore mechanics that didn't get much exploration in the main game. Like I said, these swiveling platforms, which now swivel a lot faster, meaning you have to react a lot quicker. And the roll comes in handy for that, because like I said, it's like a dash and a duck. So using it as a dash is really important. I don't know, I just think it's really cool that they make sure to explore every platform mechanic as thoroughly as possible. Even the ones that you probably forgot about. It's just really good design. Like I was saying, I have a lot of respect for Blue Tongue Entertainment, because even though most people remember them for the Nicktoons games, Attack of the Toybots is a great game, even aside from the Nicktoons license, and they also made The Blob. Hey look, it's more of the trampoline platforming. It's like that gear platforming we did earlier, except this time it's steaming hot pipes. So if you could handle that, you could probably handle this. It's a little bit more cramped, but just remember that going under obstacles with your double jump is really important. And you can time your double jump to activate at any time. So even though you have a lot of control over your platforming in this game, it's not that your platforming abilities are limited, or that the character's platforming abilities are limited, it's that the environment limits what you can do for you, which is a good way to do that. You have a lot of platforming freedom, but you gotta use that freedom to make your way through constrained spaces. And I think that's nice. I like that. You know, this is the kind of game where you can't really use the controls or the jump height or the jump mechanics as an excuse, you know, it's all you. The game reacts immediately and the jump does exactly what you'd want it to and it's very predictable. So it's all on you if you goof up. You ever play the game Prenny Can I Really Be the Hero on the PSP? I think this game's probably harder than that, but I think most people would disagree. Because most people have a lot of problems when their platforming mechanics are limited like they are in Prenny. Like, your platforming mechanics are very deliberately limited in Prenny. You have a very rigid jump arc, and your double jump works in a very specific fashion. It's very robotic. You know, the platforming mechanics are very limited, which is the point. But I actually find that kind of thing easier than this. Because when the platforming mechanics are limited, I already know what I can and can't expect to happen when I press the buttons. But when the platforming mechanics are as loose and fluid as they are in Attack of the Toybots, the environment can be as crazy as it wants. Technically, nothing's off limits. Because if the game reacts immediately to what I do, and I can change my jump height, and I can control my double jump at any time in the air, then the environment is allowed to do whatever it wants, because it doesn't have to worry about platforming constraints. You know, what's physically possible is very open in this kind of game. In Prenny and games like it, because of the limited platforming movement, there's only so many kinds of jumps you can do, and only so many ways you can...
Good news! You have rescued 100 fairies, but there are still more to be found. Do you see this cardboard thermometer? It goes up to 500. You have only found 20%. When you have rescued all 500, I will reward you. What are you waiting for? Get out there and find the rest!
That's why I think this more free kind of platforming is more difficult than the more rigid kind of platforming. Because I know what to expect more with rigid platforming. That's about it. Okay, so we're in the Master Model Chamber again, and this is the last Master Model Chamber we're doing in this video, and then in the next video we're going to move on to the second factory zone. Lots of Toybots in this Master Model Chamber, which I think I already said I think are the enemies with the most health. A lot of hits they take. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I look forward to playing more of this game, because I really, really like it.